Growth is any positive development that actualizes potential.
Interesting.
So in psychology, and there's this whole field called the human potential movement that deals with the utilization of one's talent, helping people to discover and realize and capitalize on their potential. So when I think about my history, I started off as a personal manager, and as a personal manager, I was concerned with helping people to capitalize on their potential. So one of the ways that we did that back in the day with personal management was to first understand what exactly is it that you are presenting to people. And in order to do that, we have to first deal with identity. Identity is very, very important. So even before I understood psychology as I understand it now, I was intuitively aware of the fact that we have to first discover and then determine, who are you? So as a personal manager dealing with record companies, the record companies will say, well, who is the artist? So my responsibility very early on was to help artists discover, who are they? How do they distinguish and distance themselves from the competition? So from personal management, I got into consulting. And with consulting, the question still came up of, who are you? What are you trying to accomplish? What potential do you have? What tools do you lack? What do you need in order to go from point A to point B? So I got into coaching. And then from coaching, I got into becoming an educator, which is really who I am at the base. So as a personal manager, I was teaching artists about who they are. As a coach, I was teaching people how to utilize the tools that would help develop their careers, to help them realize their potential. And then from being an educator, I got into consulting, where I was helping people in corporate America utilize their workforce talent and harmonize workplace relationships. So all of this is based upon potential. So what I realized in my career, looking at it in retrospect, is that I was always involved in helping people grow. I went from helping people to establish, develop, and advance their careers to helping people develop a greater sense of work and life fulfillment. And in this processes, it was all about growth, personally and professionally.
And I should have mentioned this because you've spent over 2 decades in the music industry. And so when you talk about being a personal manager, you were talking about managing artists and their careers in the music industry. And you eventually segued that into this blog that you have called The Growth Tree. I mean, why the topic of growth? I mean, of all of the things that you could write about, why did you choose that topic? Why is it so important for people to have access to information about the topic of growth?
Well, the other thing with regard to being a growth expert, it's not something you set out to become. It's a branding mechanism. People refer to me as a growth expert before I referred to myself as that. And just in the same line as someone being a change agent, like in corporate America, they talk about somebody being a change agent. Well, the growth expert is somebody who understands the process of growing. So for me, so much of my studies, my background, have to do with where careers and life intersect. So to be able to put an emphasis and understand what it takes to grow in a personal and professional sense was very important to me. A light came on in terms of what my real calling was. So the blog was really important because now I could extrapolate all these lessons. I could take all the studies that I've done, all the research that I committed to, and a lot of the things that I have lived, and a lot of the things I have been influential in helping other people to live, and bring it into one spot to where people can get the offering of all of the growth processes and the philosophies that I have to offer.
I know that growth is a very individualized thing. I mean, everybody kind of has their own path in which they grow and develop.
Absolutely.
What are some techniques kind of around the board that a person can start with to begin that process?
You know, the best process or the biggest step to take is the hardest, and that is being honest with oneself.
Yeah, that is hard. That is hard.
People are more dishonest with themselves than they are with other people.
True.
So what I've learned is that there needs to be conversation. And a lot of people arrive at their truths based upon a series of questions. So when we start talking about identity, because a lot of people talk about living their lives, being true to who they are. Well, how can you be true to who you are when you don't know who you are? Mm-hmm. So in essence, what happens when you don't know who you really are, you're now being true to your false self. Mm. So I spend a lot of time helping people to develop what's called intrapersonal intelligence. Mm-hmm. We often hear about interpersonal intelligence or interpersonal skills, but we never talk about intrapersonal intelligence. And that is how well you know yourself. Mm-hmm. Because we are always acquiring information. We're always developing knowledge about other things and about other people. The lack of knowledge that we have about ourselves creates a barrier to growth. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I want to do is help people come to the realization of who they are. Who are you really? And who you are is consisting of your values, your beliefs, your attitude, your perspectives, awareness of your talents, your potentials, likes and dislikes, and the personality traits that you possess. So the very first thing is to discover, who are you? Mm-hmm. And the second thing is, what do you want? Who you are and what you want are two of the most important things to know. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times I'll send somebody home with homework mm-hmm. and say, go ahead and figure this out. Get back to me and we'll go forward. And I'll never hear from them again because it was that hard.
Right.
I have a lot of my students in my career planning class at San Francisco State. I have students that tell me, I never thought about this. And we're not talking about people who are college age, which is 18 to 24. Mm-hmm. We're talking about people who are in postgraduate studies, mm-hmm. people who are 27, 29, 30. Mm-hmm. They never thought about who they are or what they want. So the very first thing is to discover, this is who I am, where do I go from here, and what do I need to do in order to get it? That's where the growth occurs. Because once you know who you are, mm-hmm. and now you've come to the realization that there is possibility there. Mm-hmm. Now we have to tap into your potential so that you can unleash whatever tools that you need to do, you need to unleash in order to get it. That's very, very important. So number one, being honest. And then number two, okay, what do you want?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You had mentioned your belief system. Mm-hmm. Why is that important to the growth process?
Because we act in accordance to our beliefs. Mm-hmm. Every decision that we make reflects our values or lack thereof. And our values are based upon our beliefs. So whenever I sit down and I talk to somebody and I want to know who they are, a lot of the times I don't come out and just say, who are you? I ask them stories about their childhood, about the environment, the things that have influenced them, the people that have influenced them, how were they raised, where did they grow up, what did they experience, what did they encounter, what excites them, what depresses them, what are the things that give them inspiration, what motivates them. So I ask a lot of questions in order to arrive at this answer. But unfortunately, people don't spend time, once again, thinking about this. Mm-hmm. So it can be a long process, which is why I moved from counseling into coaching. Okay. Because the counseling was like, okay, we're going to talk about this for an hour. Then they're like, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to provide you with the answer to this question in an hour.
Right.
Coaching means that I'm going to get back to you over a period of time, and I'm going to be with you through this process to help you arrive at the end result.
Okay. So you have this PowerPoint presentation that you've put online, and it's called The Significance of Growth. And one of the things that it talks about in there is the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. So talk about that. Kind of what are the differences between the two? Is one better than the other? Which, does one of them help you in terms of growth more? I mean, talk about that for us.
Yeah, well, this is the work of Dr. Carol Dweck.
Okay.
So she wrote this book called Mindset, growth mindset. And she talks about having a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And really the difference is that you think about closed-minded or being open-minded. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so really what she's saying is that people who have a fixed mindset are people who are very rigid in their beliefs. Mm-hmm. They believe that they're right all the time. They believe that they know it all. Mm-hmm. They believe that if there's anything to be learned, that they've already learned it. Mm-hmm. So the growth mindset says there's a lot to be learned. I have a passionate curiosity. There's someone who might not necessarily know more than I do, but they know something different than what it is that I know. And we all have something more to learn. So she really talks about these two different mindsets. And really, some people view it as positive, some people view it as negative. But really what happens with this growth mindset, and I really subscribe to this, is that the person with the growth mindset is always thinking about getting better. How can I do something better? What kind of thought process can I engage in to be better in terms of my communication, in terms of my outlook, my perspective? That growth mindset is really what enables you to grow as a person, and it stops you from becoming stagnant. Most of us are closed-minded about something. But with the growth mindset, you can identify that much easier. The people who have the closed mindset aren't even aware of it. And as a result, their growth becomes stagnated.
So it sounds like having personal awareness is really, really important to the development of one's personal growth.
Yeah, it is. That's just why mentoring and coaching becomes so important. Because clearly with coaching, that's an industry, that's a profession for which you are paid, you render a service. But you can get the same results through someone who's a mentor. And the mentor is going to be somebody who's really honest with you. But people who have a closed mindset are going to be less inclined to seek out a mentor. Because what is the mentor going to tell them? They already know it all. So, and those are the people who really need the most mentoring. So I always look for people. It's a challenge. I always look for people, especially with students. And to give you an example of this, I had a girl from Japan last semester, and she'd gotten A's in every class she had taken at San Francisco State. She was in a master's program. So she took my class. My class is not easy. And my class is not easy because people are thinking about things, as I said, that they haven't thought about before. And so I gave her a C on her first assignment. She came up to me. And she said, "What is this?" And I looked, I said, "Looks like a C." She said, "I never got one of these before." She couldn't even say C. So it was a letter grade that she had never seen before. It was foreign to her. And so I said to her, "Do you want to discuss this? I mean, I'm happy to tell you why you got this C." So as I was explaining it to her, I saw that she was completely tuned out. She may as well have went like this. Because in her mind, she was like, "I don't get C's. I get A's. I get A's in everything that I do." Now, the other professors in the program had already said, "She's really, really sharp. She's a great student." But she'd never taken my class, where a lot of the work is very interpersonal. Okay? A lot of self-discovery. And so I said, "Look, you got a C because you didn't follow the criteria. You basically did what you felt should be done based upon the work that you've done in other people's classes. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to dig deeper. I want you to be more forthcoming. I want more self-disclosure." And so she said, "But I never got one of these before."
She's so focused on the C.
She's so focused on the C. So I was like, oh my God. So I'm dealing with a fixed mindset here. And so the next 3 weeks, she got C's on everything. And then she looked like she was about to throw up. And then so I told her, I said, "Look, I think that there's something bigger taking place here than you just getting the C and not following the criteria. Is that you are programmed. You're working from a script. I do this and I get this result." I said, "I'm telling you, this is what you really need to do." I said, "You have the potential, but you got to do something different. You got to step out of your comfort zone." Okay. She was in her comfort zone. And so what I did was gently nudge her out of it. She did well. In order for her to get an A in the class, she was going to have to get 100% on the final exam. People rarely get 100% on my final exam.
I can only imagine.
So she went into it. She needed 100%. And it was one of the greatest moments that I had last semester because she did everything that I talked to her about. She went above and beyond the call of duty. She put forth the effort. And the effort led to her growth. And when it was all done, I was so proud of her. And I told her, I said, "I'm so proud of you. Not only did you do what it is that I said you needed to do for the criteria, but you did what you needed to do in order to grow."
Now, I have something that I want to kind of delve into, and it's mentioned in the PowerPoint presentation. There's a quote in there that says, growth begins when your comfort zone ends. Mm-hmm. Why does growth have to be so uncomfortable? I mean, really, like, why does it have to be scary and, just uncomfortable, straight up uncomfortable? Why does growth have to be uncomfortable?
Because, there's this thing called growing pains. And so pain, by nature of what it is not comfortable. Mm-hmm. Comfort and complacency go hand in hand. So anytime you find that you are going outside of that comfort zone, it is a little bit scary. Mm-hmm. Fear of the unknown is one of man's greatest fears. Mm-hmm. And so that is what makes us complacent to do what we've always done, which conversely enables us to get what we've always been getting. Mm-hmm. In order to do something different and to get a different end result, we have to do something different. We have to go outside of our comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And that's when we experience those growing pains, which inevitably leads to that growth.
Do you suggest that someone take baby steps or just flat out jump right into it and just go forth?
It all depends on the person. Mm-hmm. It's more of a personality thing. Like, for example, I'm going to use myself as an example here. I was painfully shy as a child. Mm-hmm. Okay, I meant painfully. Dealing with people, going into a room with people, doing anything that just required a group of people was very difficult. Mm-hmm. I came to the realization very, very young that in order for me to get past this, I was going to have to deal with this. So I just threw myself to the lions. I attacked what made me very fearful. Mm-hmm. So instead of shying away from groups of people, I would go ahead and put myself in the middle of them. Mm-hmm. That's the way I dealt with it. That was more of a personality thing. Some people will go ahead and edge themselves up more and more, build the courage, and then attack it that way. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, we all have to face those things. Those are just barriers. And as a growth expert, really one of the main things that I do is help people identify and remove their barriers to growth. Mm-hmm. I identified my barrier at a very young age, and it served me very, very well. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm in a position where I can help others do the same.
Define the significance of the growth process as it pertains to work-life balance. You talk about that in the PowerPoint presentation. Yeah. And I mean, it seems to kind of come up on a daily basis. How do you balance between being a professional and a parent and a husband and a mentor and a coach and all of these things?
Yeah, see, all those things are challenges. Mm-hmm. And we don't grow without challenges. So if you think about the things that are most important to us in life, those are the things that represent the greatest challenges. So the whole work-life balance is about having a consciousness of what's taking place at all times and understanding how those worlds overlap and how they intertwine. And I think that when people lose sight of the fact that these worlds are so interconnected, that's when they get into trouble. So really when we're talking about with work-life balance is creating a consciousness for what it is that you're doing and understanding why you're doing it. For example, most people who work for a living, they think about their own needs. Right. Then they start thinking about the needs of the people that they're responsible for taking care of. It becomes significant in that regard. But are you going to work to the extent to where the very people who rely upon you also rely upon your presence and your interaction and your contribution to their lives? So we need to go ahead and balance that out. Right. And perhaps maybe it's a matter of reducing one's overhead or a matter of choosing work that will allow you to make the contribution that's necessary for their growth because you grow as a result of meeting that challenge.
What do you know for sure about the growth process?
I know that it begins where your comfort zone ends. I know this. I know that it absolutely begins where your comfort zone ends. And people who are not aware that they're in a comfort zone are the people who are in the same place 1 month, 2 months, 1 year down the road. I can always tell. I can always tell. Because once again, the growing pains are very real. It's not just for children who are going through some metaphysical changes. It is for people who are striving to reach their potential. So this whole human potential movement that I spoke of earlier is really, has a lot is predicated on who you are. Your personality, traits, and characteristics have a lot to do with who you are. But I believe that we can choose our identities. So you had asked me about belief systems, and I said that people, they make their decisions based upon their beliefs.
Right.
Well, the same is true with identity. We choose to be who we want to be. The same way when I was dealing with people at record labels, when I was dealing with music artists, you choose to be who you want to be. A lot of people don't make that choice. But once again, we act in accordance to who we think we are. So I think at the end of the day, we live our lives in accordance to who we believe that we are. And if we don't do that, then the lives that we create will dictate our identities.
Do you think that a person can never reach the pinnacle of the growth process? I mean, is there an end cap result, or is it forever growing, forever changing, forever evolving?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because growth and self-actualization is not some end result that you arrive at. It's not some goal that you achieve. It's a process that you embrace.
Right.
And so many people who think that, I'm going to get to this particular point and then I've arrived, they're incorrect. Because we're continually growing. Each situation and each environment that we find ourselves in is going to necessitate that we continue to grow.
Right.
And we continue to adapt. So the growth process is ongoing. The only time it ends is when we do.